What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today, I want to talk to you about Green Hornet Blood Ties by Andy Parks and Johnny Desjardins. This is a 4-issue miniseries. It is a prequel to the Kevin Smith, Phil Hester, Jonathan Lau Green Hornet stuff that is based on Kevin Smith's screenplay that never got made into a movie. This is about the Green Hornet's last days of trying to clean up Century City, as there's a little bit of a power struggle within the Yakuza, the Japanese mob, and then also the American mob in Century City. And I think there are some interesting ideas in this book, but ultimately I think the execution leaves a little bit to be desired. For one, Green Hornet and Kato are in every issue of this book, but I don't really feel like they carry much presence here. They're in the book and they're doing stuff, but the main character is really this one gangster who is second in command of the mob in Century City. He's the guy that we're kind of following, and he's the one who's kind of moving pieces around and making stuff happen. He's not really a good guy. He ends up getting quite a few people killed. I mean, he works for the mob, so he's not a good guy, but he's also not a good guy, if you know what I mean, kind of paraphrasing that Wreck-It Ralph scene. But he is kind of your protagonist because he's the one who's actually doing stuff. Whenever we see Britt Sr. and Kato, they're doing stuff also. They're trying to bring the mob down, but ultimately I feel like it's this other mobster who kind of makes all that happen. So I think if this whole book had just been from the mobster's point of view, I would have been a little more interested. I was already kind of interested in him anyway, because he's caught between a rock and a hard place. His best friend is dying, and then his best friend's son is going to be the new leader of the mob, and he's a psychopath, and nobody likes him. Everyone's kind of scared that he's going to make everything fall apart because he's crazy and he's not a good leader. And so this guy, he's not sure if he should stay loyal to his friend who wants his son to be the new leader, or if he should kill this guy, the guy who's going to be leading, and then kind of maintain the status quo that has let all of them kind of live good for a little while. I'm kind of interested in that. I'm much more interested in that than I am with anything that's going on with the Green Hornet here. In fact, there was, at one point, I was about halfway through this book, and I was reading it all in one go, and I was about halfway through this book, and I said to myself, I don't think Green Hornet and Kato were in the previous issue. And I went back and looked, and sure enough, they are in it. In fact, they have a pretty big scene in that issue, but it didn't stick with me. I was much more engaged with this mobster who is kind of at the end of his rope, and he's not really sure what to do. I was much more interested in that than I was what Green Hornet and Kato were doing. And it kind of reminds me, I've heard people say, what's the point in reading or watching a prequel because you already know what's going to happen? And I disagree with that on principle, because by that logic, you wouldn't ever rewatch your favorite movie. I know what happens in my favorite movie, but I'm still going to rewatch it many times. So by that logic, you wouldn't ever, reread your favorite book or re-listen to your favorite song because you know how it goes. But I think with this, in the very beginning of the book, it says, this is 20 years ago, and I was thinking about in the Kevin Smith, Phil Hester, Jonathan Lau, Green Hornet stuff, we see them close up all the crime and stuff in Century City in like the first 3 pages of that comic, and then they moved on into the actual story that they wanted to tell. And I don't think there's much of a Green Hornet story here that Andy Parks and Johnny Desjardins wanted to tell. I think they had an interesting mobster story that they wanted to tell, and then they slapped the Green Hornet on the book and tried to sell it as a Green Hornet prequel. I think if you took out Kato and the Green Hornet here, you'd have an interesting story. And I almost want to go back and just reread the scenes without the Green Hornet, because I think the story would have worked a little better. And I know Andy Parks has done some crime comics before, so I'm curious if this started as something else entirely and then he tried to retool it into a Green Hornet story. Also, I think the art is not very good at making characters distinguish from each other. There is one flashback that's set 35 years before the rest of the story, and we have 2 characters, they're mobsters, and then it cuts forward to the present day, which is like 1990 for this story. And then one of these guys is talking about, yeah, those were the days, and it all of these guys in the scene look the same. I was having trouble telling them all apart. And then, like, the next time we see two of these characters, one of them suddenly looks 30 pounds skinnier, and he's in a hospital bed attached to an IV. And I wasn't sure how much time has passed. Has this been, like, half a year? Or is this, like, a week later? I wasn't really sure. But in the scene where they're all reminiscing, like, all these guys kind of look the same. And one of them is supposed to be the father of another one. But they don't really look that much different. They don't look older or younger than each other. And so I do wish that the artist was a little better at making these characters a little more unique with each other. I can tell the Green Hornet and Kato apart from everyone else, obviously, but I don't really have as much of an easy time telling all these mobsters apart. And speaking of mobsters, you've also got some Yakuza stuff going on here that doesn't really tie into anything else in this book. Now, one of these guys, he was a character in the Kevin Smith, Phil Hester, Jonathan Lau Green Hornet stuff, and his son was kind of a big part of that storyline with Britt Jr. In that series. So I guess they felt like they had to set him up here so that they could kind of pay off that setup from this book in that series. Even though I think this came out after the Green Hornet stuff by Kevin Smith, I think. I don't know, but I think so. But his story, the Yakuza stuff here, does not tie in with anything else going on in this book. And I was not interested in that stuff at all. I was much more interested in this other gangster and him kind of not sure what to do with his life. I liked what was going on there. The Yakuza guy, I didn't care at all. Now, at one point, at the very beginning of the book, he gets a letter from his wife saying she just found out that their next child that she's pregnant with is going to be a girl, and then she runs away from her husband. And she says, please raise my sons, our sons, to be good, kind, nurturing men, which you married into the Yakuza. Do you really think that's going to happen? But then I thought, oh, maybe this is going to do something interesting. Maybe Kato from the Kevin Smith, Phil Hester, Jonathan Lau stuff, maybe she is actually this mobster's daughter. And I don't know if that's what happened because Kato is actually from Hong Kong. He's not from Japan. So I don't know if that would work, but this book sets up a subplot, or it seems like it's setting up a subplot, that I thought surely that has to be important. That has to come up later in another Green Hornet story. This woman runs off and has this mobster's kid, and it sets it up like that's going to be a thing, and then we never see this woman again in this book. We never see her daughter. He even tells one of his underlings, he says, kill my wife, but leave my daughter alive. And I don't know if that actually happens, or if the daughter shows up in the Britt Reed Jr. stuff set 20 years later. I don't know. Probably either she is somehow connected to the Kato stuff. I'm thinking maybe we're going to see a flashback somewhere where old Kato says that this mobster woman came to him and said, hey, can you raise my daughter for me? And then she gets killed. I'm guessing something like that's going to happen, or this mobster's daughter ends up becoming a ruthless mobster in her own right, and she's not in any way connected to Kato. But when that was happening at the beginning of the book, I thought, oh, maybe they're setting up like a subplot here, but that never gets resolved in this miniseries. So I have no idea if I'm reading too much into that, or if that's something that is completely ignored after this. Maybe that was just there to set up this Yakuza guy needing a reason to come to America. I don't know. But anyway, that's all I have. I liked roughly a third of this book. I didn't really care about the Green Hornet stuff. I didn't really care about the Yakuza stuff, but I liked the rest of the mobster stuff. So I thought it was okay, better than I thought it would be. I had actually read this book about 10 years ago, maybe, and I remembered nothing about it. So I was going in not expecting it to be very good, and I actually did enjoy it a little more than I thought I would. So that's all I have to say about Blood Ties, and that's going to be the last Green Hornet review that I have for you guys for a while. I did do a few Green Hornet reviews years ago. In 2017, I did a review on the Kevin Smith Green Hornet Batman 66 crossover, and a little bit before that, a year or two before that, I did a review of the Shadow Green Hornet Dark Knights crossover. So if you're looking for some more Green Hornet content on this channel, look for those videos I did years ago. But for now, that's all the Green Hornet stuff that I will have in this little mini series of Green Hornet reviews that I've been doing. The television series from the 60s, as far as I know, those episodes are up on YouTube, but I don't have time to watch and review that entire series in a week. So for now, that's all the Green Hornet stuff that you'll be seeing on this channel. So next week, I'll be doing something totally different. But anyway, hope you guys like this video, and I will see you guys in the future. Have a good one.